smiling because John and I discuss city government every now and then. I believe the professionalism may, I mean, the degree of people who have studied to do what they're doing in city government may have increased some. I think a lot of the people that were in city government when I was there were citizens who were employed by the city, but now we have a lot of professionals or paraprofessionals in government, I think to a higher degree than we did back then. And what that means, I think, is it improves planning, probably, improves facility use, improves some efficiencies, because government's become a lot more complex, I think, since I was mayor 20 years ago. Well, I think citizens still complain loudly when they disagree about something. That hasn't changed. I think the need for the city to secure water rights and to secure water for growth hasn't changed. I think the problems associated with landfill use and other things haven't changed. We still have, we're carting it off now, but that is still a problem. Disagreements with other government agencies about funding hasn't changed. So, when I was mayor, the county and the city got along fairly well, but it wasn't anything that I was doing. It was just, when I was a boy, it was over here on Main Street. I guess that's 600 something Main Street, and that's the earliest city hall I remember. There was a lot of places before then. It was. I have these old maps of Kerrville, and you'll see city offices, city offices, city offices. So it was, and John can probably help me with this, but I believe it was above Francisco's for a little bit. It may have been on the corner where the Guthrie building is now for a little bit. It may have been up where Sheftall's is for a little bit, and there was even a municipal office across the street from the print shop at one time. The biggest change was bringing EMS services into the city under the fire department. Probably the most long-lasting change was the authorization with the city and UGRA and others to, we went to Austin to testify to have ASR wells. They get the permitting process for ASR wells so we could store water underground and pull it out later when we need it. So that long-lasting thing was probably just as important as the EMS thing.
At that time, the Union State Bank building was the same size that it is now in square footage, and one half of it was occupied by the police department. That was the police department in there, and the other half was the city hall with all of its functions, collecting for the utilities and all of the staff. So one half of the building, the whole city staff essentially was located in one half of that building. There were some other outbuildings at that time. I think the inspection department was in a rented house, and there were a few other departments like that. They were outside, but to have a city council meeting, we had to move some people out of the way and set up temporary tables and all to have a city council meeting in the city hall. And there was no council meeting room to speak, so to speak. And so it was very crowded, and they needed some more room. About that time, the LCRA was going to move out of it and set up some other offices of their own, and they came to us and offered that building and the property where the city hall presently is located to the city. Don't remember the exact price they offered it for, but they'd had it appraised, and my memory is around $330,000. It was thought that it would be better to be towards the central part of town, but we had this opportunity to acquire the property, and we needed the space, and we could get the property at a good price, and so we decided that the benefits outweighed the not outweighed the location near the center of town. It was a project that took, I'm going to guess, over a year, because we had to not only buy the property, then we had to raise the money to do all the remodeling necessary for the city hall. And that took a while, and then the construction, the remodeling and all took a while. I was always surprised back then that we were required to have public hearings on our budgets, and I expected a lot of people to come in and citizens to come in and participate at those public hearings about a $13 million budget, which I thought was a very important thing to talk about, and we needed a lot of input from the public on it, and maybe one or two people would show up at those public hearings. That always kind of disappointed me about the lack of public participation. We passed, there was an attempt to pass an ordinance back at that time about a leash law for dogs. There was a lady here who was a blind opera singer who was a very good singer. And she had a seeing eye dog, and she would walk her dog in the evenings, and some of these other dogs that were not on leashes would come out and attack her dog, and so somebody rousted up a proposed ordinance to require a leash law. And that ordinance, now that was just after we had completed the new city hall, and we had our city hall, the current city hall, city council meeting room, and it filled up that room with the interest in the public, with standing room only, and it filled up the hall outside the meeting room, and it filled up the lobby, and it filled up the parking lot out front towards the highway. As a contrast to, I think it was an important issue, of course, but a lot more people showed up for that than they did for a $13 million budget. City council up until that time was mostly local people that had been here a long time, or maybe grew up here mostly. See, my family moved here in 1941 when I was 2.5 years old. And we kind of, I don't know, I'll guess that the population at that time was 5,000 to 6,000. And it was a small community, and I could walk down the street and knew most of the people that I met on the sidewalk. I can walk down the street in Kerrville now and not see anybody that I know. It's just changed totally, and we get a lot of people here. The character of the city has changed. At that time, we had a hunting and agriculturally based economy, primarily, and that's we still have some of that, but it's not nearly as dominant as it was before. And back in those days, when you went to a grocery store during hunting season or right before, why, it was full of hunters in there shopping for their supplies. You can go to the grocery stores now, and you may not see any hunters in there. They'd be in their camos and things like that back then. Back in the 80s, I went, or 90s, I think, I went hunting up in Wyoming, and went into some grocery stores right before the hunting season in Cheyenne, and walked up and down the aisles and reminisced, because we were in our hunting clothes and there were a bunch of guys in there like that. And it reminded me of back in the 50s and 60s in Kerrville when it was that way. And it's not, I miss that. I miss that small town atmosphere. It's become more of a big city like now. We got a lot of traffic problems now, and I guess a number of the big city problems, crime rates and all of that comes with it, that I miss the old days. But I guess all old people do that.
The charter, when I was mayor, called for the council to appoint a mayor. It was a kind of corporate set up where the board or the council chose among its at-large members. I recall the criticism that we all got for it was having the first $1 million general fund budget, and I don't know what it is now, but it's considerably more than that now. Right, and everything was there. We had fire department, police department. You paid your water. The water department was in there. The engineering was in there. At that time, we did our own ad valorem tax collections. Municipal court was in there. In fact, that's where the council met, was in the municipal court room. We even had a holding cell in there, right, with the police department, and that's if you got picked up for DWI or something like that, that you were held in that cell rather than going over to the jail. The jail at that time was on the top floor of the courthouse, and was not the best place in the world to send somebody that that just drank a little bit too much the night before. So we had our own little holding cell there, which we do not have now. I would say probably the park program that we had. We applied through the Parks and Wildlife Department to. At that time, the city did not have a municipal swimming pool, and so to swim in the river, and gosh, each summer the health officer would say that no swimming in the river. So we wanted to work to get a municipal pool, but we wanted it to be a little bit more than that. So the Singing Wind Park was created. One of the biggest changes is that we did not have the what do you call it, the Public Records Act. We did not have the what do you call that, Joe, with where you have to have the agenda and all that.
Open Meetings Act?
Open Meetings Act. And so we could pretty well, I recall after the council meeting, we would usually go out to Five Points and invite and have a rump session, but you can't do that anymore. And there wasn't anything illegal going on, all of that. It just that we were able to discuss things in the city without having to comply with all of the Open Meetings Act thing. And I agree with the Open Meetings Act, by the way.
Enjoyed his Olympic pool a lot, because that came about the right time when I learned to swim.
Mm-hmm.
I actually learned to swim at that pool.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm. And how old were you when you were first elected?
37.
Yeah, we're two of the youngest mayors ever.
Right.
How old were you?
30.
30?
Yeah, I was the youngest until he came along.
So we two were the youngest. I don't know, how old was Todd when he came? He was pretty young.
Yeah, he was young too. He was younger than I was.
Even though young hands were at the city survived.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like having kids. You got to be young to have kids. God intended it that way. Because when you get older, you can't do it. So.